thank you so much for being here. My name is Joylette Portlock. I'm the Executive Director of Sustainable Pittsburgh, and we're so happy to be here with you for this important conversation today. So we're here because plastic pollution is still one of the biggest sustainability issues of our time, and something we shouldn't lose sight of, even as we grapple with other unquestionably urgent challenges, such as climate change. When I say sustainability, I'm talking about sustainability challenges. What I mean is a comprehensive, ongoing commitment to support healthy residents, vibrant communities, and advance environmentally responsible practices. And we're here today because we've had a realization, right, that materials that we've long considered disposable are anything but neutral, whether that means plastic pieces in our ecosystems or litter in our neighborhoods. We realize that reducing this waste requires systems change. Single-use plastic waste isn't something that we're going to simply recycle our way out of. And so there are a lot of important conversations to be had about the systems that are operating and how we can modify them to help reduce this waste stream. There are many considerations. For instance, currently single-use plastic items and other plastic materials are necessary to improve livability and access for people living with certain disabilities and medical conditions. This is a complex topic, and we need to give thoughtful consideration to the fundamental ways we use resources and interact with each other and the world around us. So very happy to be here. The Plastics Collaborative is a network of organizations that identifies and takes action on opportunities to reduce single-use plastics in the greater Pittsburgh region. And it brings together a large set of partners to create that greater impact. The collaborative includes representatives from community groups, nonprofits, businesses, and local governments. And the work of the collaborative is centered around education, policy recommendations, and pilot projects with working groups established for each of these topics. And I want to give a thank you to the several participating organizations in the collaborative which have been involved in the planning of this event. We know, everyone today knows that the pandemic has certainly changed a lot of things. However, even in October of 2020, McKinsey & Company reported that 55% of U.S. survey respondents indicated they are extremely or very concerned about the environmental impact of product packaging. And plastic waste, by all accounts, has become an increasing and changing issue during the pandemic. The concern remains, and so today we're going to hear from business and community leaders who are working from many different angles to implement practical solutions for reducing single-use plastics. And we're going to have the opportunity to join in on breakout discussions later today for some deeper discussion. At Sustainable Pittsburgh, we work every day participating in regional initiatives, working with business and community decision makers to build our communities to last and to make the sustainable options the easy options. And so with that, I'm just going to conclude my brief welcoming remarks. Thank you all again for participating in this conversation today, and end by turning next to City of Pittsburgh Councilperson Erica Strasburger, who represents the residents of the city's 8th District.
Thank you so very much, Joylette, and thank you for those remarks. I'm really going to echo a lot of what you have said, and I just want to start by welcoming everyone here to this Plastic Summit. It's exciting. We put a lot of work, all of us together. You'll hear who put in all the work in a bit, but all summer we've been working towards this and are just so excited to be able to share everything that we've been able to cobble together for you. Wonderful speakers, great breakout groups and discussions later on. And hopefully we'll walk away with having learned something new and with some new motivation to work on this really multifaceted and challenging topic. So I want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you for taking some time and joining us today. This event has been organized as a way to gain some insight from local businesses, from community members, leaders on this subject, subject experts, to learn how they are, or we can, continue to implement practical solutions to reduce single-use plastics. And so you're going to hear from a wide variety of folks from different sectors today, because it's not just a single issue that's impacted, or a single sort of type of group that's impacted by plastics. It's an environmental issue, yes. It impacts our our natural world, but it also impacts us as humans, our own health, the beauty of where we live, our neighborhoods, the natural area, and our own human health as well. So this is something that cuts across many, many sectors, and we wanted that to be represented today. You will learn today about current initiatives to reduce single-use plastics in the region and propose legislation at the local level that can benefit businesses, benefit the community and the environment. And if you've been following this topic, which if you're here today, I'm guessing you have, it's no secret that City Council and with me kind of leading the charge on that is planning to introduce legislation that will regulate single-use plastic bags here in the city of Pittsburgh. But this issue goes far beyond plastic bags. In 2018, my office, soon after I was elected, was studying regulating single-use plastic bags. We had seen this trend happening in cities and in states all across the country and throughout the world. But my personal interest regulating plastic and cutting down on waste and the issue of everything that goes along with waste dates well back before my time on council, or even before my time working at the city of Pittsburgh when I was working for then Councilman Dan Gilman. I spent about 10 years working as an environmental advocate, both here in Pittsburgh and in New Hampshire, and worked on state and federal level fights to ensure that the air we breathe, the water we drink, the land that we live on and in is clean and healthy and safe for everyone. And understanding that tied up in that are equity and justice issues as well. So this is a small part of that big long-term goal of mine and of many people here today. And so I am happy to be moving forward with a bill that would place a ban on single-use plastic bags. And that's because, we know that plastics are harmful for the environment in a lot of ways. From production and the production of plastic, which involves drilling, in some cases, hydraulic fracturing, extraction of fossil fuels from our land, which causes air pollution, to the actual cracking of the plastics, which can cause air pollution and water pollution and is hitting close to home for us right here in Pittsburgh and not far from here, to the actual, roughly, I think on average, 20-second use of a single-use plastic before it's then thrown away. In the best case scenario, recycled or reused. In the worst case scenario, in the middle case scenario, thrown away and ending up in a landfill. Worst case scenario, ending up as litter on our streets, in our waterways, over hillsides. So many reasons why we need to care about single-use plastics and plastics in general. I like to say, this is a little bit controversial, but plastic is a pretty magical material. And that is because it lasts a really, really long time. We should be utilizing them, as Joylette mentioned earlier, utilizing plastics in smart ways for ventilators, for hospital equipment, for materials that need to last and be durable over many, many uses. And we should be rethinking them as a one-time use, 20-second use, and then thrown away. I think tied up in this is a conversation about the circular economy and what we can do. Yes, we have plastic circulating in our economy right now. What can we do to harness our local expertise, our local brain power, and figure out a way to truly recycle or reuse them in smart and healthy ways, but ultimately cut down on the production and use altogether. So that is tied up in this conversation as well. And that's what I'm excited to be hearing about later today as well. So, needless to say, we need to be thinking about this issue comprehensively. And that's why this summit will be focusing on not just a single-use plastic bag ban, but all single-use plastics and sort of plastics more generally, and the greater circular economy conversation. So we will be discussing the legislation in more detail later in today's summit, and we do want to hear from all of you. Part of the goal of this conversation is to ensure that we are getting a well-rounded set of questions, concerns, considerations. This is not the beginning by any means of the conversation. We're in the midst of this right now. But before passing legislation, you want to make sure that you've talked to all as many affected parties as possible and have a well-rounded perspective, which is what we want. So if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you're opposed to a plastics bag ban, if you have concerns about alternatives, whatever the issue might be, this is a perfect opportunity to hear from, for us to hear from you today on that topic as well. So just some light housekeeping, and I want to go over today's agenda. As a registered attendee of today's summit, you should have received a packet, a virtual packet that includes the agenda and some of the speakers and some of the facilitators, all the participating organizations, and the agenda. But let me quickly go through that with you in case you don't have it in front of you. So we're closing in on the end of the opening remarks. Next will be a keynote speech from Dan Donovan from Giant Eagle, followed by a panel discussion. Don Mahaney from Scratch, Myrna Newman from Allegheny Cleanways, Chef Claudia Pierre from EAT Initiative, Rick Schwartz from Bloomfield Garfield Corporation, Christopher Mitchell from the City of Pittsburgh. Then we'll have a short break, and then you'll be joining on a new Zoom link in breakout groups where you'll be able to discuss, everyone will be able to discuss the same thing. So all the groups will be different people, but the same topics, the same questions that you'll be able to discuss, the proposed legislation and other initiatives in the region. Then there will be an opportunity to hear about some of the interesting initiatives that others have been working on, whether it's at institutions, whether it's legislative and advocacy, whether it is in different boroughs and townships and cities across the state. Then we'll have a closing speaker, Dr. Eric Beckman from the University of Pittsburgh, followed by networking rooms so that you have an opportunity to talk in a more relaxed setting with others who care about this. And maybe if there's an issue that you didn't get to bring up, then you get to ask that question then. So before I close out and turn it over to our next speaker, I have a number of thank yous. So many thank yous, and we'll be doing thank yous more later, but I wanted to start by thanking everyone at Sustainable Pittsburgh, truly a wonderful co-host in this event. Allie, Joylette, Rebecca, others from Sustainable Pittsburgh have done an amazing job, and they're all working behind the scenes as we speak, making sure that this event goes out without a hitch. So thank you so much to our co-host there. Ashley Deemer at Penn Environment, Natalie Awesh from Humane Action Pittsburgh, Zaheen Hussein, who also helped to plan us. All three of those people were instrumental in helping to plan and think through this event. Thank you to our facilitators of the breakout groups, Zach Barber, Jeanette Walker-Vinsky, Alicia Carberry, Natalie Awesh, Rebecca Bioski, Sabrina Kuiba, Ashley Deemer, Zaheen Hussein, Jennifer Thomas, and Ali Walker will be helping to facilitate the breakout groups. And of course, could not have done this without my wonderful team from the District 8 office, City Council, Emily Yonan, Miranda Mercier, and Davon Brown. So thank you all, little kind of virtual round of applause to all of those folks and more for helping to put this together. Wanted to also let you know, and you'll hear this more later, but following this summit today, if you were registered as an attendee of the summit, you'll receive an email around next week with a recording of the summit. So please be aware we are recording this. If you know someone who is unable to join, or you yourself are going to have to leave and then come back and miss a portion of it, you will be able to view it later. We also are going to be harvesting and capturing what's in the chat. So I know that a lot of people share information, resources. We'll be harvesting that as well and sharing that out. And we'll also be able to share other resources from today. So please rest assured that you will not miss anything. We have people helping to capture all of that. So I am now pleased to turn it over to our partners and our friends at Giant Eagle. And I have to say, that we initiated this conversation pretty soon after, and the real effort in ramping up of this, the Plastics Collaborative that is sort of hosted by Sustainable Pittsburgh had already been up and running. There was a lot of momentum around this issue. And then Giant Eagle announced they wanted to be plastic free. That is their goal, is to be plastic free. I think at the time it was, 5 years from the announcement, wanted to be plastic free. That's huge for a grocery store, for an organization that has many different, a wide geographic reach, large footprints in different areas, both urban and suburban and rural. That's a big goal. And so we knew that they were an entity that we could go to with questions to bounce ideas off of. They were really, had similar goals to what we had as a council office. And I think that many in the Plastics Collaborative felt the same way. So I am so pleased to introduce Daniel Donovan from Giant Eagle as our keynote speaker. Just a quick introduction. Dan is Senior Director of Corporate Communications for Giant Eagle. And in this role, he's responsible for Giant Eagle's public-facing communications and community efforts. He leads strategic alignment of Giant Eagle's 4 corporate social responsibility pillars: food insecurity, health, social justice, and environmental sustainability. So with that, I am pleased to turn it over to Dan Donovan for your keynote remarks today. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you so much, Councilperson, and thank you, everyone. Very, very excited for Giant Eagle to have this opportunity to tell our single-use plastic story. 2 housekeeping items. Number 1, as Councilperson mentioned, I believe that if folks want to put questions into the chat toward the end of my comments, we'll do our best to answer those. Secondly, apologies for what may appear to be a very boring background. It's actually chalkboard paint. When the pandemic started, and Giant Eagle employees, like so many, moved to remote work, I wanted to start giving little bits of inspiration to the folks that I interacted with. So I started with quotes on a chalkboard. But based on the video, you might not be able to see the entire quote. So very quickly, away is not a place. Your trash goes somewhere, which I think is not a new quote, not something anyone in this group hasn't heard 100 times before, but nevertheless, I think a common thread for this important summit. The councilperson suggested you might just see trash goes somewhere. If that's the case, my apologies, but it's still true. Again, thank you everyone for giving Giant Eagle this opportunity. I and we at Giant Eagle recognize that we are only one of many folks, many individuals, many organizations, many government entities, and a host of others who are tackling this important topic of single-use plastics. But I think we also recognize that, quite simply, as a supermarket, as a place, whether you're going to Giant Eagle or you're going to another place to get your goods, supermarkets play a really forward-facing role. Plastic bags, plastic bottles, utensils. I mean, there's so many things that we think about when we think about single-use plastics, that good, bad, or otherwise, you go to the supermarket as your kind of place where you get those items. So we recognize 2 things. 1, that gives us an immense responsibility. And secondly, it gives us a unique opportunity to tell a story. So I wanted to make sure that this group knew that we very much appreciated and recognize our special place, but we know that we're just one of many. It was mentioned, thanks Councilperson Strasburger, I work in the communications and community space for Giant Eagle. Today, Giant Eagle does have those 4 community pillars. We actually have teams working within each of those pillars that are doing the important work. My job is kind of twofold. 1, kind of acting as a community liaison, if you will, to bring that work to life, because as I'll talk about throughout this, and as has already been touched on, we can't do this alone. We as Giant Eagle, we as any individual entity on this group. So working with important people like Kara Merciels, I know attending here today. Hi, Kara. She's Giant Eagle's leader of sustainability. Working with her on the important work she does and making sure that we're engaging folks internally across our business and externally to bring that work to life. While additionally taking the sustainability work, taking our social justice work and our health work and our food insecurity work, and also helping to form a united story for that. It's so important, whether it's our team members internally or our customers and communities, that folks understand these aren't one-off efforts that Giant Eagle's undertaking, but it's part of a bigger purpose that we're achieving. We're hoping to achieve, I should say. If we could please go to the next slide. When Giant Eagle first opened our doors 90 years ago, our founders wanted to improve lives for folks in our communities. Quite frankly, protecting our planet is an incredibly important way that we can do that today and going forward. With that said, what sustainability means to Giant Eagle is a host of things, but to break it down to 4 simple things, it's a key takeaway for as far as how we deliver our purpose. Our purpose is here, lowercase p. As we talk about internally in Giant Eagle, it's capital P purpose. We actually have 3 key tenets of our purpose. One is providing safe and healthy food and medicine to folks in our community. 2 is ensuring that all folks feel respected, whether that's in our stores or in our communities. And 3rd is protecting our planet for future generations. So it's very much in the fiber of the why we do our business. Secondly, we're meeting customer expectations. Not just the smart folks in this group, but folks across our communities to varying levels of awareness and education. They know that they want more from the businesses that they give their time to. They want more from those businesses in terms of what are those businesses doing to protect our communities and protect the health of our communities. Thirdly, it's obviously it's a brand differentiator for us right now. I will say that in future years, I think the hope is that it's not so much of a brand differentiator, because if it's not a brand differentiator, that means that other businesses, namely in our world, other supermarkets and other convenience stores are taking big and bold steps too, and they're pushing us to do better. So today we think it's a great point of difference for us. Our charge will be to continue to make that a point of difference, and how we can best do that is by doing what we can to stay ahead of the curve. And then lastly, it's just good business. It's just, quite simply the right thing to do. And that's incredibly important to us as well. If we could please go to the next slide. So at Giant Eagle, we're on an environmental sustainability that focuses on really 5 key areas. First, and certainly why we're here today, is to reduce plastics. Secondly, Giant Eagle has a huge obligation to help tackle the notion of fighting waste. Thirdly, decreasing, and as we recently announced, decreasing carbon emissions, and as we recently announced, actually achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2040. Fourth, we carry tens of thousands of products in our stores. How do we go product by product and category by category and make each of those products more sustainable? And that's not just from a plastics perspective, but a whole host of perspectives. And then lastly, but though not least important, we have 34,000 team members who, both in our stores and in their lives, can unlock so much more in terms of what we can achieve. So we're actively unpacking how do we best empower our team members to take all the work that our teams are doing even further. As I mentioned, we made a net zero carbon emissions commitment a few weeks ago, and as we'll talk about in greater depth, in December of 2019, made our ambitious commitment to eliminate all single-use plastics from across our organization by 2025. If we could please go to the next slide. So let's talk about single-use plastics specifically. As I mentioned, our goal is to eliminate all single-use plastics from across our organization. Just stop for a minute, put yourself into your local supermarket, whether it be Giant Eagle or elsewhere, and take a moment to think about all the places. Maybe you're having something in the in-store cafe area and there's a plastic fork and a plastic knife. Maybe you're shopping down the beverage aisle and you see bottled water and you see bottled soda and such. Maybe you're by the pharmacy and you're getting your prescription in a little plastic bottle. let alone at the checkout and you're getting the plastic bags. I mean, it is, to say it's an ambitious goal, which is the words we use in Giant Eagle, is not only a fact, we recognize it's a really tall task. Inside of our four walls at Giant Eagle, we made a conscious decision to set this really ambitious goal because we felt it was not the only way, but a critical way to galvanize the resources that we're going to need inside of our four walls to really bring this to life. And we'll go into single-use plastic bags in more detail in a few moments, but just using that as an example right now, single-use plastic bags are really cheap. Customers are really familiar with how they're used and benefit from them as far as making it easy to transport the goods they buy in our store. And then we do feel good about this today, but we can also feel good that outside of a lot of our stores, we have recycling bins for those bags, where we actually take those bags and work with other third parties to actually put that recycling into good use and actually make other products. So we could argue that if it's not broke, don't fix it. And we have lots of tasks ahead of us as a company to innovate and do better for our communities. But the reality that we all know is that it is broke and that we do need to fix it. So setting this ambitious goal allows us internally, again, to really galvanize those resources, to be very upfront and say, look, we've put it out there. And now we need each and every one of our team members, those 34,000 I mentioned a few minutes ago, to get behind us and go on this journey with us. That first and foremost, from a priority perspective, is about internal culture shifts. Having those conversations, unpacking the different areas of the company and the different product categories and the different elements, and talking about, we need to have a culture shift in how we work. And then part of that is engaging external partners. There are lots of other folks in this space. I'm thinking of Coke and Unilever as just two examples who are making similarly ambitious commitments. So they've put it on the line on their end. We've put it on the line on our end. Let's partner and make sure how we can both make progress in these important areas. So that culture shift, that external engagement becomes priority area number one. Number two, customer-facing plastic transition. Mentioned bags, mentioning utensils, mentioning cups, mentioning catering. Shameless plug, I really enjoy Giant Eagle's fried chicken. I have 4 kids. On numerous birthdays, we've catered fried chicken and other things from Giant Eagle. Giant Eagle makes it very convenient. We have the plastic tongs and all the plastic silverware and all the plastic plates, and it's very easy for my kid's birthday party. That is not a path forward. So how do we go into all these different customer-facing spaces and provide solutions for our business and for our customers? It's incredibly important as we take ourselves on this journey, we can take our customers too. I think bags is an example that we'll delve into of our ability to do that here in a few minutes. And then lastly is optimizing product packaging. Whether you're thinking anything from the bagged frozen veggies in the frozen department, the shredded cheese you might buy over by the dairy, whether it is we were just talking about the box of spaghetti with the little window that shows you what spaghetti actually looks like. Is that little window necessary? TBD. But how do we take the packaging part of this equation and really tackle that in smart ways? So those are 3 key priority areas. Thank you, Diane, for the very nice comment. Could we please go to the next slide? So then there's the how. And this is kind of, as you see here on the screen, kind of the reverse of the good, better, best model. It's the best, most preferred to the left, and then we're going to make our way right. Starting with eliminating. This is also the hardest. This involves removing packaging altogether. We're finding reusable models that are also safe from a health perspective. And this does feel impossible at times. We have seen things work, from milk partnerships to non-edible category changes. The milk example we'll touch on in a few minutes, but it's really, the milk example is a neat one because while we are all off looking for lots of new ideas, what has not been done yet that can get us forward, there's also a lot of ideas that feel a little bit more old school, but actually are already in place and can go further. The next step, if we can't eliminate, we want to replace. Where there are economically and good customer experience opportunities, we're looking at alternatives to single-use plastic. This includes compressed paper, and this includes plant-based and post-consumer content. Third, if we can't eliminate or replace, we're going to redesign. Redesigning with reduction and recycling in mind. This looks like thinning. This looks like right sizing. This looks like vacuum sealing and labeling for recycling. This is also about reducing recycling hurdles with things like recyclable labels and caps. When we say 100% recyclable, it needs to be just that. And last is our baseline approach. When can we remove all non-recyclable or low recyclable materials? Think about styrofoam, think about PVC, think about multiple type plastic and things of that ilk. So again, we know what the best solution is. We also know that we're on a long journey, and long journey will have steps and we'll have phases and we'll have milestones. So we all know elimination is the end goal, and we are going to do everything within our power to strive that in every part of our business. But we don't want to miss opportunities to get better and to improve. So that's what these key steps are about. If we could please go to the next slide. So here's just a sampling of some of the successes we've had to date. I mentioned milk on the top left. In our Market District stores today, we actually have a program in place with a local milk company where it's the old school glass bottle program. You put a deposit in for the glass bottle, and then you can take the bottle home, bring it back. When you bring it back, you get your deposit back, but assumingly you're going to continue to use those glass bottles. So that is a program, again, in place at our Market District stores. Certainly just in terms of the volume of that type of milk versus other types of milk, we need to continue to take customers on that journey and kind of increase that awareness as we think about expanding something as simple as that. Bottom left are Zoom bars. So this is a bar of soap. Also, certainly in all of our Market District stores, I think it may have also started creeping into some of our Giant Eagle locations. What you see there is how it's packaged. Zero packaging aside from that label there. But quite frankly, just no package at all. When you think about things like our bins of grains and different materials in our stores. Again, that was more of a COVID impact. We had to stop those loose items from being available. But how do you create more opportunities for maybe consumers to bring in their own packaging if it's more of loose items like some of those grains and other ingredients, or something like the soap with no packaging at all. Bottom left, we've partnered with a local company, Fifth Season, to reduce plastic packaging on leafy greens, lettuces, and salad blends by 40% per package. We're saving 55,000 pounds a year of plastic due to this change alone. And you see a lot of other examples on here of just items that are, when you have, again, 50 to 60,000 items in a store, it's going to be one product at a time. It's going to be one category at a time. And we're going to continue to get those small wins to get those wins. Yes, I think there's a good call out of the plastic bin for Fifth Season. I'll go back to the journey we're on. And this is improvement. This is getting better. Today, the 55,000 pounds of plastic a year that have been saved just that alone, we feel really good about, but we know we're not done. It's a great call out. Could we please go to the next slide? On our journey that started formally in December of 2019 and January 2020, single-use plastic bags were kind of a key milestone to talk about as we started that. Americans use 14 billion with a B plastic shopping bags a year. stats are always funny because some of these stats sound so big that it's just hard to get your head around them. Nevertheless, I think we'd all agree it's a big number. What we did starting in January of 2020 is we took single-use plastic bags out of 22 supermarkets from across our footprint. The majority of those stores, admittedly, were in Northeast Ohio. Cuyahoga County had in place a bag ban similar, but I'm sure in many ways maybe different from what the council person has in place. So we worked with the county in that regard to make sure that not only were we meeting their mandates and their requirements, but also we were actually out ahead of it. Councilwoman Sunny Simon out there and other folks were key partners in making sure that, again, tying back to not so much looking for opportunities for Giant Eagle to put our name out there, but more so understanding our obligation. As a company that does have high visibility with our communities, we have an obligation to be side by side with all the folks doing the great work to make this progress. So between January and March of 2020, across these 22 stores, we were very proud to be able to say that we prevented 20 million single-use plastic bags from entering landfills. Very proud of that. Were and still are actively looking for ways to continue the rollout of that. But the reality that we all know too well is in March 2020, the pandemic hit. The pandemic hit, and amongst the numerous ways that impacted us individually, as communities, as businesses, for Giant Eagle, we were at a time back in March and April where none of us quite understood how the virus was transmitted on surfaces and on packages, So we had to make the decision at that time to stop the use of reusable bags in our stores. And to be clear, reusable bags are really the key to the single-use plastic bag effort. I talked about taking customers on the journey with us. I will never pretend to know what it means for someone to spend $1. I don't know anyone else's budget. Having said that, given the affordability and the wide availability of reusable bags, we felt at that time that this was a journey that customers could easily go on with us. So reusable bags are the answer. At that time, however, because we had to stop the reusable bags from being used in our stores, we had to give customers a plastic bag option. The Waterworks Market District in the Fox Chapel, Aspinwall, Sharpsburg area, the Waterworks Market District was the store in Pittsburgh where we piloted that. We had what I think was really good success in the 3 months where we had it in place. But as for all the reasons I mentioned, we had to halt it. That was a halt. I mentioned Kara Merciel's with us today. Kara is leading the supermarket group and our company in general in terms of how do we relaunch that. We think in the coming weeks and months, we'll have some exciting things to talk about in terms of getting back on that program and making sure that plastic bags is a key part of the work that we do here. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is comparison of year over year rankings from an organization known as Greenpeace. I think everyone is at least familiar with Greenpeace as an entity. Part of the work that I do with Kara is engaging a number of non-government organizations in terms of the work that they're doing. I mentioned galvanizing resources inside of our four walls. The person who's leading our milk category, as an example, he or she has a pretty complete plate of work already. And now we're coming to him or her and we're saying, plus you got to tackle this important challenge with us within your category. What we realize is that a lot of groups, both on this summit and also across the country and across the world, there are numerous groups who are dedicating their entire focus to these important spaces, Greenpeace being one of them. We were engaged closely as good partners in Greenpeace in 2019 when they ranked us 16th on their single-use plastic scorecard. And we were equally as engaged with them in 2021 and 2020 and 2021 as they were kind enough to give us the #1 ranking. The #1 ranking is something we're certainly very proud of, but with it comes, as I've said all along, a lot of responsibility. I mentioned brand differentiation. We're very proud of the differentiation we think something like a Greenpeace ranking gives us. We also want to work really hard to keep that. And as good partners, Greenpeace has let us know that they're going to work really hard to ensure that we stay committed to it as well. This notion of partnership is something that we at Giant Eagle take very seriously. Both on this topic and other topics, we've been, I hope, our Councilperson Strasburger would agree, have been good partners. But that idea of partnership is not just applauding one another when we do good things, it's holding each other accountable and really encouraging and pushing us to be better. So that's how we view something like this ranking. Very proud of it, but know that it just means that we need to keep the momentum we've built and we need to keep progress going. Next slide, please. So what's next? Quite simply, we recognize that the challenges we face, not just as a business, but as a society are significant. We learned this since March 2020. We've certainly learned it more with the recent reports and scientific evidence about our climate. The world is not going to wait for us to catch up. We need to make progress. We need to keep pushing one another. And I say we, not just be within Giant Eagle, but it really does take all of us collaboratively. There are so many people on this call who have big and small ideas that are going to help Giant Eagle become better, going to help some of our partners become better. I've seen really good comments in the chat about 5th season. I won't profess to be an expert in all the great work they do, but I'm sure they would say they're doing good work and they can do better work. So it's really going to be all of us coming together to figure out how to move this needle forward. What's next for us? Expect product changes that reflect sustainability commitments. I mentioned that in a number of areas. Secondly, intentional alignment with vendors who prioritize their products with our vision. There are so many companies, big and small, who are making great commitments and making great progress. We need to work together to unlock it. We need to work together to prioritize their work, to make sure that not only is that item that is more sustainably focused on our shelf, but it's on our shelf on a predominant way. So we can encourage customers to take this journey with us across our store. And lastly, as I mentioned, we need folks like the folks in this summit to come to us with your ideas. It's incredibly important to us that we are open and available to all ideas, because I will tell you, my friend Karen Marcil is far more educated, far more of an expert in this space than I am. I think she'd probably be the first person to say that she doesn't know all that's out there and all that's out there for Giant Eagle and our communities to benefit from. So those are the 3 spaces that we're going to continue to focus as we move this important work forward. But again, this notion of all of us in this together, as noted by my next slide, is what's really important. If we could please go to the next slide. It's going to take all of us. And that's what's, I think, really the takeaway I hope folks in this call have, is that we recognize the obligation that as a company we have. We recognize the number of single-use plastics that our business is tied to. And while we are extremely proud of the progress we've made, we know we've set a very ambitious goal, as I've said, and we're going to need partnership from a lot of different folks to help us make a lot more progress. So with that, I think I'm doing decent on time. I want to say thank you again to everyone. If there are questions now, I'm happy to do my best. Certainly, as a follow-up to this, would be more than happy to help as well.
Thanks, Dan. I think you have time for one question, and maybe the others we can address at a later time. looked like there were some questions in the Q&A. I don't know if you're able to view that.
I'm just looking at, I just see Sarah's question about packaging changes. Yeah, look, there are realities that we don't want to pretend don't exist. There are realities, the cost probably being the predominant one. I wouldn't say that any of our vendors, we've hit roadblocks. I would say that every vendor partner with their unique products is at a different place in their journey. A lot of what we do is education and is to make clear our commitments and what we've committed to our communities, and making it known to our vendor partners, we're going there and you're either going with us and you're not. And if you're not, that has, I don't want to use consequences, that sounds far too dire, but that has meaning, that has implications. So I don't want to say roadblocks, but certainly with the number of products we have across our store, different vendors are at different parts of that journey as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dan. And I did note that there were some questions that were typed into the Q&A as opposed to the chat. So since those, we don't quite have time to answer those live right now, but and I'm not sure who's able to view those, but we'll make sure to get them into the chat so everyone can see them. And then, maybe Dan can take some time in the chat to answer them, so we can capture that as well, or answer them at a later time during this talk. But thank you so much for your remarks, for all that Giant Eagle is doing, for sharing the great news out of Ohio, where there's been some legislative success and the almost immediate changes that occurred due to that legislative change. Really staggering, really amazing. And acknowledging that it's going to be an all hands on deck effort. I mean, when I think about the task before us, it's not just legislative and advocacy. It's not just changing of behavior by individuals. It is changing behaviors and culture in businesses and institutions. And it's also things like changing our entire recycling system, our recycling economy. What does that take? Adding more, changing the way that we reuse and recycle. And what is that going to take? It's going to take changes to land use codes and zoning codes and comprehensive land use decisions that are, that we're going to have to make as cities and as counties and as regions. So there's just so much to this issue. It's going to take additional funding, federal funding, and other sources of funding to academic institutions to really prioritize this. I mean, it's just humongous. So couldn't agree more that it's going to take all of us and all of us working together. Thank you again. And let's give a virtual round of applause to Dan and to Giant Eagle.
Thank you, everyone.
Now I am thrilled to move right along to our panel discussion. And Allie Walker is going to be moderating this panel discussion. So she'll introduce I briefly introduced the panelists earlier, but I will introduce Allie in just one moment. I just wanted to say briefly, for those of you who have joined partway through, I'm Erica Strasburger. I'm a member of Pittsburgh City Council, co-host of this event today, and just thrilled to be here, thrilled to have all of you here. I also realize you all can't necessarily see the number of attendees here. We have about 55 participants, so a solid turnout today. And I know people will be joining here and there, having to leave, maybe coming back, new people coming in later. Please know that this is being recorded, and you will receive, as an attendee, a registered attendee, you will receive a follow-up email with the recording, with additional information and resources. So please know that if you miss anything, you'll be able to catch that, plus the chat that will capture later on. With that, I'm happy to turn it over to Allie Walker, Special Projects Coordinator at Sustainable Pittsburgh, one of the hosts of this event, who will be moderating the panel discussion. So I'll turn it over to you, Allie.
Thanks so much, Councilperson. So in addition to Special Projects Coordinator at Sustainable Pittsburgh, well, I guess as a part of my work there, I am the coordinator of the Plastics Collaborative. So that's why I'm here today, to introduce to you all of our wonderful panelists. And if they want to go ahead and turn their videos on and unmute themselves. They're here today to provide us with each of their own unique relationships with single-use plastics and how it involves in their work. I'm basically just going to go through and ask them a series of questions. Again, feel free to put questions in the chat or the Q&A, and hopefully we can get to some of those at the end. And if not, we will accumulate them and hopefully be able to answer them in some capacity after the event. Let's see. So I'm just going to start panelists with a bit of an icebreaker. Basically, I'm going to call your name and I'm going to have you just speak briefly, introduce yourselves, speak briefly on the work that you do, tell everybody who you are, and talk about how plastics and single-use plastic interacts with your work. And maybe what concerns you have about single-use plastic, what concerns you'd like considered with legislation. So let me, I think we're having technical difficulty, but okay, let's see. First on my screen looks like Christopher Mitchell from the City of Pittsburgh Department of Public Works. So Christopher, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about yourself and let us know how your work interacts with single-use plastic.
Sure. Hi, my name is Christopher Mitchell. I'm anti-litter specialist for the City of Pittsburgh. As somebody who focuses on litter, you can imagine that plastic is huge in my world. It makes up a majority of really what we see out there. I work as outreach coordinator with the Clean Pittsburgh Commission. This past year, we've worked with Litterati, which is a global it's a global crowdsourcing auditing app for litter. While people pick up the litter, that takes a picture, it categorizes it as a plastic. Is it a cigarette? Is it a bottle? Is it this or that? Unsurprisingly, plastic makes up the largest amount of items picked up with Litterati, about 60% or so, even considering that cigarettes make up the largest amount of litter. But it is a constant front on what do we do, what small things can we do here and there to just take chunks out, of this problem. And big actions may seem like it has a very small effect, like bags itself. Single-use plastic bags, according to our data in Pittsburgh, it's about 8% of what's picked up using Litterati. And if 8% seems really small, but if you can take out 8% of something in a single swoop, that's significant. But yeah, it's all about messaging. It's all about understanding what's actually out there and finding ways to work with people where they are on how to shape their behaviors. So that's me.
Great, thanks, Christopher. Myrna, I'll go ahead to you next. This is Myrna Newman from Allegheny Clean Waste.
Thanks so much. Yeah, Allegheny Clean Waste, like Chris just spoke about, has our big concern, of course, is litter. Our mission is to engage and empower people to clean up litter and illegal dumping in Allegheny County. And in the 21 years that we've been working here, we've cleaned up more than 5.4 million pounds of illegally discarded trash. And we've known for a long time that a big portion of that has been plastic, but we never really could quantify that, because when you're talking 5.4 million pounds, most of that weight is in construction debris and some of the heavier things. Plastic doesn't have a lot of weight. So we were grappling with, how do we tell that story of how much plastic we're actually picking up? Because we know we're constantly picking up pieces of plastic, but that doesn't really translate in that number. And so in 2019, we conducted a waste audit. So in 3 days of collecting trash, we collected about 12,000 pieces of trash and categorized and sorted and did a brand audit and everything of that litter. and of that trash. And what we found, that was both from land and from our riverfronts, because we do cleanups on both. And again, not surprising and kind of parallels Chris's findings. About 67% of what we collected was plastic. On the riverfronts, that number rose to 90%. And again, not surprising because plastic floats, and that's what ends up on our riverfront. But obviously plastics and single-use plastics are a huge issue. And I should note too that of the 67% plastic, about 20% of that we found was film. And film being, could be plastic bags and things like that. That's where the film category comes into play. So yes, single-use plastics, we would love to see eliminated, make our job so much easier. And so we're grateful for this conversation. Thanks.
Thanks, Myrna. I'll pass it on to Dawn. Dawn Mahaney is from Scratch & Co. Go ahead,
Hi,
Dawn.
everybody. I'm glad to be here today. Thanks. So I own Scratch & Company. It's up in Troy Hill, a restaurant. We have also ancillary operations where we are contracted to do the kitchen work in Bar Botanico in Lawrenceville. And within a couple of weeks, we'll be doing the kitchen footprint at 1700 Penn Avenue in the Strip, which is really awesome. We, in the last year and a half, have really taken to examining all of the interplay we have with the food value chain and how we can make a good impact on the community, no matter what it is we're doing. And when it comes to single-use plastics, we have some major concerns. We don't use any disposable bags like that and haven't for some time, but we have real concerns, as well as many others in the industry, around single-use gloves, trash can liners, and film, which was mentioned just a little bit ago, used to wrap food. There are not, as I've found, any really solid alternatives for those, but that's one sort of set of issues. Another are packaging in stream, things that are further upstream from us that we get in the restaurant packaged, and talking with our vendors about what we would like to see as a more acceptable model moving forward. We've discovered a lot about that ourselves in moving into our own value-added food line, Scratch Made, that concentrates entirely on sourcing its products from the local food shed, which we define as Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Columbus. So it's kind of neat in working with all of the farmers locally that you don't see that kind of packaging coming to the door when we go to co-packing facilities to make these products. And I think that maybe the more that we can concentrate our energies on the specific localities and not focusing on sort of global commerce, we can unlock a lot of innovation and a lot of new ways to approach these issues, similar to what they're doing at Giant Eagle with looking to the past and using glass recycling for milk programs. So a lot of things to talk about when it comes to banning plastic bags, I think, because that puts a lot of onus on the individual, and having partners like Giant Eagle and other businesses in the area saying that they're going to step forward and promote the same goal, I think would do a lot for the individual consumer when they face having to make a behavior change over time as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Dawn. Rick, you're next on my screen here. So I'll go ahead and introduce you, everyone. This is Rick Schwartz. He's from the Bloomfield Garfield Corporation.
Hello, everybody. Hope you can hear me. We are a community organization in the east end of the city. And for years, we've been engaged in dealing with the hundreds of vacant lots in our neighborhood that accumulated from years of demolition in the 60s and 70s and even into the 80s. We also have probably close to 100 vacant houses in the neighborhood. That's probably a third of what we had 20 years ago. So we've made some headway. But these sites in our community are collectors for all kinds of debris. And most notably, it's plastic debris that we're dealing with in most cases. Sometimes it's construction debris, but largely we're looking at bottles, cans, plastic bags, that have roped themselves around weed overgrowth and trees in our community and really creates a pretty unsightly landscape. We work with Allegheny Cleanways in recent years. We mobilize 3 to 4 neighborhood cleanups every year. We've won a couple of the garbage Olympics that have been sponsored. It's not exactly anything to kind of blow your horn about, but it just testifies to the how quickly this accumulates in our neighborhood. And the danger that it poses for wildlife in the community, particularly birds and others that can somehow get ensnared with plastic and try to even consume it, is also a problem that we see from time to time. So on the whole, we're kind of applauding Councilwoman Strasburger's efforts here. We think the transition to a non-plastic bag environment is not going to be an easy one. To their credit, Aldi grocery stores has already made this transition away from plastic. And the people who visit Aldi are people who become very used to carrying their own canvas or other kinds of bags that are used again and again and again. So if Aldi can do it, and then our feeling is that Dollar General can do it, and Family Dollar can do it, and the little corner convenience stores can do it. But it's not going to be without some pain and inconvenience for sure. I saw from the chat room that canvas bags, if we can find a way to make those interesting options for people with maybe logos of neighborhood football teams on them, or neighborhood sports programs, or other kinds of sponsorships, that it might help make the transition a lot more easy than what we're anticipating. So our goal, obviously, as a community, is to see a decrease in the amount of litter that hits the streets. The city's done a fairly good job in the commercial districts of containing this problem, but in the residential areas, it's still a nagging concern. And it's not helped, I don't want to cast any shade on the city here today, but we've not seen a consistent program of lot cutting and lot cleaning. And we have parts of Garfield where the weed overgrowth is so substantial that it'll take almost any piece of bag flying by and capture it and hold it for a fairly long period of time. So again, we're here to kind of contribute what we can in the way of ideas and even, manpower, woman power to get this problem addressed.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you. Next, I'm going to introduce Chef Claudie Pierre. Among many other things, he is the CEO and founder of the EAT Initiative. And I will have you unmute, Claudie, and introduce yourself and just talk about how your work interfaces with single-use plastics.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Sak Passe, that is Haitian for what's up. And my prayers out to my people in Haiti. Thank you guys for having me. I am excited to be here. I am, like you said, the EAT Initiative stands for Empowerment, Awareness, and Training Initiative. That's our outreach side of things, where we actually just believe that, having access to fresh produce and food entrepreneurs is a basic human right. So we are excited to continue that. I'm also the owner of Eminent Hospitality, where we do a lot of catering. And we used to have Arnold's Tea over on the north side, and we're opening up a new cafe very shortly here. So I come from a whole different lens. I'm coming from a strictly community lens, although I am an entrepreneur and I love the sentiments about, film and plastic gloves and things of that nature. I'm coming from a lens where, and I hope that people can hear me and resonate with this. A lot of the people in the communities that I serve they receive the plastic, the single-use plastic from a local business, or they receive it from their grocer. You know, all the, you know, you can purchase the little bit thicker ones, or whatever the case may be. However, they use a lot of the single-use things for other things, right? So it becomes an umbrella. It becomes a book bag for some. Like, you're talking about people who are working 2 and 3 jobs. So I love the fact that we're very conscious about how we're going to move forward and actually, you know, disrupt the system. The key, one of the things that I'm coming for is suggestions on how do we find a solution that actually closes that gap. There are people who are less fortunate, who don't live in Fox Chapel or Aspinwall. They don't have a car, right? They're at the bus stop, and these single-use plastic bags, as you can see, are what they put over their head if it's raining. They also are the people that use it when they're carrying, you know, things from work because they don't have a Samsonite. So I'm using that to say, and I'm painting a very vivid picture. My lens is, how do we find alternatives? How do we work together to say, hey, we want to make sure that, yes, we're taking away plastic from the environment, but there's people that this is a lifestyle change and a cultural change that a lot of people on this call don't really have to deal with, right? So I just have to call that out because it's something that's very near and dear and important to me. And not to mention from a small entrepreneurship standpoint, and then I'm gonna stop here. We don't have the luxury of time and certain resources. We're usually operating from a deficit. We usually borrowed money from friends and family. The cheapest option to repackage, especially during a pandemic, to get gloves and masks and whether you're selling product to someone or transporting, is single use, right? This is what we package things up to give people because they want to support our businesses, and we don't have the alternatives yet, or the access to it, or the time to really research it. I had one of my restaurant friends tell me, yeah, you know, I spent 2 hours looking up the next, you know, a better packaging. And I'm like, dude, I wish you could carve out 20 minutes extra in my day, or some of the, you know, other entrepreneurs that I talk to on a daily basis. So I'm coming from it from that lens. So I'm excited to be here to hear some of the suggestions. I'm also here to lend positivity, and I'm excited to see where this goes. I know that there's a lot of other cities that think about this stuff. So maybe that's one of the avenues that we go about, is just asking other people, what have they been able to do to actually get this ball rolling like this? So if you guys have any questions, you know, comments about that, I would love that. But I'm here. I'm excited to hear what everybody has to say.
Awesome. Thank you, Chef Claudia. I'll just hop right into our list of questions. I think actually that was a really great avenue into this next question I have. And I do hope to hear from all of you. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the question, and I will just open it up, and feel free to speak to it and have different conversations. So Councilperson Strasburger plans on introducing this legislation that would ban single-use plastic bags in retail and restaurant companies, businesses, and it would allow for a fee on paper bags that would then go back to the business. So my question is, what considerations need made regarding single-use plastic legislation? And I think Chef Claudia really touched on that. So to the rest of you, and Chef, if you want to elaborate on this as well, from the lens of your work, what considerations need made regarding single-use plastic legislation, and any specific concerns that you may have regarding that legislation?
Are we just popping in when we have any?
Feel free to go right ahead and start this conversation.
Great. Well, I'll start. My biggest concern, and I think some of it is addressed in the legislation, but Chef Claudia already spoke about some of them, and I'll let him speak more on that. From an environmental perspective, though, I think my big concern is trading one environmental nightmare for another environmental nightmare. So, you know, many of those of us who are old enough know that we went to plastic bags because of deforestation. You know, our paper bag, our forests were being cut down for paper bags, and so we moved to this, you know, lighter weight, easier, cheaper, all of the things not made out of trees, plastic. And so, you know, being able to make sure that we're not trading one bad thing for another. And then cotton canvas bags have come up as a solution also. And those are problematic as well. You know, the amount of energy required to make canvas bags, the environmental footprint of cotton and so forth. And so again, just making sure, and I think the legislation does address some of that, but that's my big concern.
Anyone maybe from the business sides of things have any considerations that they would like?
I mean, I'll jump in from the community side.
Great.
I think Chef Claudia has hit on an important note. Behavior is very hard to change. And the convenience of plastic bags really is kind of indisputable. So if we're going to make the switch, or we're going to encourage people, particularly people in communities like Garfield and Bloomfield, the inner cities, to make that change, there's going to have to be some real thought given to, you know, how do we make this kind of an exciting thing for people to do, and not just kind of you know, a lot of reluctance about it. So I think, you know, figuring out in each neighborhood, you know, what can we do to brand this effort that relates to the neighborhood itself and helps maybe to build neighborhood pride, neighborhood identity, you know, neighborhood history. You know, if we can be creative in that regard, if in the Hill District, you know, you've got an August Wilson bag, which symbolizes the fact that he was raised in the Hill District, you know, tying into those things. I think it would help make this transition happen, but, you know, we're going to need some corporate support to do that. You know, if you're going to be asked to use a canvas bag, you know, people just may not want to purchase it. So they're going to be looking for some way to acquire alternatives inexpensively if they're going to use them on a regular basis. So again, being creative about how we brand this effort and change behavior, because it's not easy. It's not easy to do.
John, Claudia, Chris.
So I wanted to say, I love that. By the way, I am a Hill resident, so thank you for saying that. One of the things that I do want to say is that the marketing and the messaging is important. So like you said, making sure we package it properly so that the community receives it. But the other thing is, really these alternatives need to make sense, and it isn't going to happen overnight. So the bags are one of them, but also helping people understand why it's important to discard the plastic properly. What do they have in place of it? Like I said, this is not just a bag for groceries. You know, like identifying, and maybe it's a small survey we can put with food that we distribute thousands of pounds of food and all that. So with distributions, we can ask questions about this. So I'm willing to put that in one of our surveys. But really, I mean, people use this as like trash can liners. They use it as, you know, like, I mean, I honestly am looking at even when they're transporting, you know, food from place to place, you know, after the purchase. So that's where I am. I think that all of us, this is going to be a transitional thing, helping people understand. And I think that there's money in marketing. There's money in some of the corporate structures. So what I don't want to happen is people in like Rick in, you know, Bloomfield, Garfield, to have to brunt or be, you know, kiss butt to actually get money to fund, you know, certain bag initiatives, right? We need to put it back on the Giant Eagles and back on the UPMCs and the people that are traveling for work. How do we incorporate that into their marketing expense, right? How do we, it's a broader, more macro, that it ultimately goes back to them, but it's something that they could put in the line item in their budget that doesn't affect them as much. You know, every time maybe it's you know, and I'm not with the whole, you know, tax the person that has more money for the less, but really like these major corporations, UPMC is the biggest employer of the Commonwealth. really hitting that on the head. And I don't know, maybe there's something here with, I know the discussion is around ARPA funding and county and city and infrastructure, but what does that look like? Like, what does it look like to get investment from more than just us that care, right? Like, it's just like, we need to help others understand how this actually can be funded and how the messaging, I'm talking about bus billboards and tech or alerts that are that pop up on your phone from geofencing. I mean, there's tech around this stuff. So I think there's more to this conversation. I think that's what it is. You can do, like, I love that, right? Donating reusable bags and making that part of your marketing and part of, instead of giving us a lanyard and certain things, like we invest in reusable bags or really that education piece and making it a whole campaign. Because what's happening is the people who are most affected by it in other peripheral ways are the people who are going to be screaming the loudest. The people who have a car, the people who don't go on a bus, the people who, they can go to the farmer's market and grab a box of something, are not going to scream about it. My family and my friends are some of the people who, they're doing 2 jobs and they're cleaning a hotel room and they got to get home on a bus. And those are the people who are going to get crushed. And having a nice gift, like you said, I love the idea with some sort of community embodiment with it. We need to use it as a marketing leveraging tool, advertising. We need to, make Giant Eagle and UPMCs. You want to promote? This is how you put your marketing dollars, right? And also use it too, right? The corporate exec needs to make it cool. Influencer marketing. The Steelers need to make it cool. I'm throwing ideas out here. This is how you get the Steelers to hey, we don't want another bobblehead, right? We want you. I mean, it's funny, but it's not. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are the kind of things that we gotta leverage low-hanging fruit. This is not far-fetched. You know what I mean? And this is how you get people excited to carry their Steeler tote, and reuse that on the bus, right? And I don't know. I don't want to ramble.
Thank you, Chef Claudia.
I'd like
Christopher,
to jump in. Thank you. So to your point exactly, Chef, that what we often find in from a city's perspective of reaching residents is the ones who need the most help with these sort of things are also the hardest to reach. They don't necessarily engage with the system like some of the more wealthier, cleaner places. If we look at our 311 data for a second, I talk about data a lot. I'm kind of a technocrat like that. But if we look at our 311 data of where people tell us the litter are, where the litter is on the ground, and then we look at our own objective data of where we find the litter, it's almost an inverse map. The places with the most litter tell us the least about it because they're less likely to engage with these sort of systems of here's the free resources, here's how you can get involved, here's how we can help you. And so I want to really make a point of the people who will be most affected by this, both positively and negatively. The people who have the most litter around them that might actually see the most benefit from this are going to be the ones that are hardest to engage with, the hardest to reach. And so especially the businesses that serve them, I don't want to be overly punitive towards them for not really getting on the ball with the places that are overly clean, have the wealth, and probably will take to this like a fish to water. That is my biggest concern, is we have to make sure that the people it will affect the most, it's not even a problem messaging that point. It's just the communication pathways that might reach the rest of us don't reach them.
Yeah, I think that the theme that I'm hearing here has to do with communication and how thoughtful that communication is. And, in organizational theory that you call it individualized communication. So you could do that in Pittsburgh because all the neighborhoods have such a unique identity, perhaps in a neighborhood by neighborhood way. But I think that a lot of effort has to be put into understanding a lot of what Chef Claudia is talking about and that is, where people are coming from, how they utilize something like a plastic bag, so that, a reasonable alternative can be found for that, but also that it can be done in a way that a person sees as advantageous to them. It can't be work for them, right? So I remember when going to the grocery store a lot, having a lot of plastic bags, and like sort of ended up with this like giant, boulder of them in my house, because you can only put so many of them in your garbage to line the can in your restroom, right? And then what to do with that, right? You have to lug it into your car and take it to the grocery store and recycle it. And thankfully, that's an option. But how many times does that just not happen? Do those end up going into the garbage anyway? Maybe there's a multi-pronged approach to take. And I think it'll probably take a little bit of time, but that's time well spent, because then you have a very effective rollout. And I think a lot of the suggestions that were given in terms of finding influencers is important, but find the right influencers. Don't assume that your set of influencers are going to take care of the problem and get everybody on board with whatever it's going to be. A Steelers tote, for instance, may be very attractive to some people. Hearing Mike Tomlin talk about it may be very motivating for some people. He's a motivating guy. But for a lot of others, it's just not going to do it. And I'm not saying you need to get so granular as to look at everybody, but in a room full of smart people, I'm sure we could carve that up and make some really good first efforts at finding out what really matters to people. How is this thing useful in somebody's life, and how do you get that use replaced and help meet the goal of creating a better overall environmental situation for people. It's a nut to crack, but it's going to take just I think some seriously considered conversation, like one-on-one, person to person. Surveys are great. Online surveys are great. They're good for getting certain kinds of data, but there's nothing like talking to a person to hear them, and for them to know that they were heard, and for them to know that the initiative matters, and that there are changes that are going to occur, but it's really not that difficult if the persons who are trying to make that happen demonstrate they care about those individuals who's most impacted by it.
And I think the biggest thing you're hitting on the head is knowing your audience and meeting people where they are, right? Yeah. That's the approach we've been taking with food, when you meet them where they are. And I'm gonna be honest with you, we have to incentivize people, right? Like you said, there's a ball of plastic bags. We're gonna transfer that and give you a reusable one when you do that, whatever your community org is. Or yeah, you like science? We have the science one. But there's multiple steps and multiple layers to this onion. The other thing I was gonna say is, honestly, this is not, you almost gotta treat it as if it's a campaign, but it's also multifaceted, where you obviously lobby for certain things from a legislation standpoint like this, but also you need to there needs to be a conscious effort with churches. I mean, low-hanging fruit, people that people trust in our community. They're not going to listen to a white person that comes in and says, "Hey, we're changing this thing." They're going to listen to their chef or their hairdresser or their barber or their pastor, or the person at the synagogue or the person at the Muslim mosque. These are the things that I'm suggesting, that's the next step, right? Of the marketing and really understanding, who do the people trust, meeting people where they are and saying, hey, this is the incentive. This is how we incentivize you. And what do you need in order for people to be encouraged or excited about this? And what do you get in advance? So it costs us as restaurants and grocery stores to buy these bags. So what is the savings if people start to reuse bags? Look at that number and say, hey, you bring back the reusable totes, it actually saves us. So in that savings, you get 10% off your gross. I don't know. I'm just using that as looking at this stuff exists, right? And so if we do it together, but there's not enough of me on this call, and I love you guys because we're able to have this conversation. But the people in the community are like, yeah, right, whatever. You better not try to find me for this. I wish you would. And they're pissed. They'll be like, don't you dare take away my plastic bags. And we're like, dude, I need you to, how do I get you to buy in? It's the people that they trust. It's their pastors. It's their work, their workplace. We got to get them on board and then get the community on board.
So let me transition. I think we had a really great conversation relating to this. And it was interesting. This was mostly community centered. And as we're kind of starting to discuss outreach to communities through, like you said, Chef Claudia, hairdressers and different local businesses. And this is a question geared towards business, but it doesn't have to just be answered by Donna and Claudia. But what support do we foresee local businesses needing in order to transition away from single-use plastic? And what sort of, I mean, perhaps there's a sort of messaging toolkit we can provide them with to help outreach their community, things like that. What sort of things do businesses need to help this transition? And then to the point of what we were just talking about, to help their communities transition as well.
I mean, if we're only talking about single-use plastic bags, that's one
anything.
thing. I mean, there's so much more wrapped up in the other facets of the business where you have to use single-use plastic, or we have had to use single-use plastic, that makes it more complex. But you know, I don't know. It's a really hard question to answer about, like, what would make that an attractive switch to somebody who's not already doing that sort of a thing. I'm not really clear on it. I mean, we deliver quite a bit of food out to communities, but through the partnerships that we have, we're utilizing all paper bags for those initiatives. We just managed to find that, you know, falling in our favor. I don't know how, you know, if you're relying primarily on to-go food and you're in a small margin business to begin with, that's a really expensive thing to make a change to. And some help with you know, looking at those, you know, expenses as they exist now versus what the expenses could be, and trying to capture the delta would be helpful. I think if this is a, you know, a government-led initiative, or a foundation, maybe a government partnership-led initiative, maybe there's some funding that could go out to ease that transition for small businesses. Having those businesses as partners in the community, though, is going to be also very important. So if you had a small business in a community where you knew you needed to focus on reaching all of the residents in that community, making that business, provided, like Chef Claudia was saying, it's a trusted entity in that neighborhood, as a node for that is also going to be huge, because you can see that shift happen on both sides of the commerce equation, you know.
Great, great. Myrna, I saw you had your hand up before we transitioned. Want to touch on anything? Oh, Rick, I see you unmuted as well.
I was just going to say, I don't think it's going to be the Giant Eagles that are going to be the problem. It is going to be the convenience stores. These are low margin profit businesses by and large. You know, they don't exactly elevate standards of behavior in our community, certainly in terms of the food that they offer to the community. So they're the ones selling cigarettes. They're the ones that are purveying junk food. And now you're going to ask them to do something that is really outside of their character altogether, if you ask me. So I think it's gonna, I think, be kind of a hand in a fisted glove approach at times with some of these businesses, because they just may not want to make the transition at all. And they may try to challenge the legislation even in court and say that you're imposing a cost on me that I can't bear, and I'm just not going to do it. So I think you know, finding a way to have businesses like the convenience stores in particular, you know, be able to purchase the alternative bags, whatever they may be, in bulk, and to do it at a considerable discount, and to offer it perhaps within their businesses as a promotion. You know, if you take a bag, it's, you know, we'll find, you know, some way to, you know, reward you as a customer. But again, I just think that in Garfield, we're probably going to work the consumer side of the equation, as Dawn was describing. We'll go door to door. And we'll talk with people in our community door to door. We'll go to a Garfield Gators football game and put up a tent, maybe with another partner. and talk with people at the Garfield Gators game, because there I've got 200 people who are going to be hopefully receptive, to this message. So I'm not as confident that you're going to change the behavior of the businesses themselves, other than the larger, retailers that can afford to absorb this cost.
Myrna, go ahead.
Sure, I might be going back a little bit though, and although it is kind of related to that as well, I do think that there's a danger in putting all of, and this has been stated a couple of times in a couple of different ways, but putting all of the burden on the consumer. Where for all of the reasons that everyone has already expressed. We don't have access often to the things that we should have access to. So it's not easy, it's not convenient to do the right thing, even for those of us who really try to do the right thing. It's not easy and not convenient. And the best way to do that, and is way up the chain, is producer responsibility and extended producer responsibility, and really putting the burden of the cost and the burden of change on the producers, who will start producing things that are better for the environment, are better for, and that are convenient, and that we use, because we use what's provided for us. And I want to make sure that what we provide for everyone are good things. And then along those lines, just to take it kind of one step further, is that there's another aspect of it that I think I've seen a lot of businesses, a lot of restaurants in the area moving to compostables, which is fantastic. But I also, I don't know, worry that they're spending a lot of money on these new compostables, and there's no place to compost them. There's no city compost. And so these small businesses, and I was at Veg Fest the other weekend, and a person I was with got a glass of whatever, and it was in a compostable cup, and he felt really good about it. And I'm like, yeah, where will it go? And so that business spent a lot of money to do that. The small business spent a lot of money to get those extra cups. And then there's no resource for that. So I'll stop now.
Great. And I actually think this is a great transition point. And I'm going to point to you, Chris. You're up. The next question is in tandem with this one. What can organizations like community groups, the government, environmental groups do? What kind of support can they provide? What kind of support can your organization provide to help these businesses make the transition, to help maybe producers, to help lobby producers to make the transition?
So it's kind of tough to say, here's very neatly in a package here what we can provide. I often look at what the city can do as what we can do to change the environment around people, to change behavior. I say this a lot because when I was first brought into the city of Pittsburgh in this role, they kind of sold my position as, you're going to go out there and change people's behaviors by telling them to change their behaviors. And that's not really what works, right? And so as a city, we have a lot of opportunity to change the systems around people to then influence their behaviors. And that is through legislative action. That is through the literal planning of cities around where people live. And so even though we have talked a lot about burden and personal choice and all the ways this can go wrong, the simple act of legislation like this is huge. It will have people who hate it. It will have negative repercussions, as every choice we make does. But just having a standard set of, this is what is expected of you as a resident of Pittsburgh, as a member of your community, it is changing a dynamic around people. and does set not only that standard, but does give new pathways of a lot of people clamoring for something. We have to change. How are we going to do this? There's going to be opportunity there for all of us to work together to provide those pathways of this change that people need to take suddenly, whereas before it was just our individual actions of wanting to do the right thing. We're phasing out plastics, much more compostables. We don't have where to put those compostables so far. Well, now we definitely need that place, and it's going to provide that push and that pathway to provide these things. Without it, these individual choices, while as great as they are, aren't making a big enough case. So that's why I do want to, it does sound like so much here we're talking about negative repercussion, but it's like this is a great push forward, just the action of the legislation itself. So that's how I view it.
I was gonna say, so from a municipality standpoint, I understand picking up trash, and this is a whole different ball game. I think that falls under county. Is trash county or is city?
City.
But say it again.
City.
Okay, so just identifying ways that down the road we can start to identify ways to incorporate, those departments. But one thing I say all the time to my team is it's about convenience and it's about money for the actual consumer, the community person, and for the company. How do we incentivize the company to understand, like, hey, you're doing this because it's easy and it's quick for you, company. You buy these crappy bags because you can buy it cheap and buy a lot of them in bulk, and you can pass it out without nobody being there, and it just takes away from labor and all this other crap, right? How do we incentivize them to understand what a reusable bag may cost, savings from buying millions of bags a year, right? 1, 2, how do we show them that a customer coming in and buying it saves as well? Because I don't think enough people do that research, right? They're just like, yeah, we've been doing this forever. It's cheap. We can buy, 1 million bags and it doesn't really cost us anything, and people just could take as many as they want. But really showing them like what those consequences, repercussions, or savings are, right? Incentivizing them. Oh, wow, you can save X, Y, and Z. So that's one investment. The other side is to the consumer. What does it save them, and how this reusable container or this reusable bag that we have is a cost benefit analysis, and showing like, hey, it may not be as convenient, but it is convenient. Leave it in your car, or this is a bag that you can travel to and from work that is now your reusable bag, or like, I don't know, that there's once again messaging, but that money part is very important, and that convenience part is very important. So Don said it earlier, like, you don't want to just be like, okay, this is what it is, and because people need to understand those pieces of it. That's when you get them to shift their mindset and their lifestyle. If they're like, wow, I actually saved, because now I'm getting 10% off from not using plastic bags. Cool, they'll do it. I get a fuel perk. I don't know what it is. The company says you got to show them those savings on that side of it, right? And that's where you start to get everybody to buy in, like, shit, I don't want the bags, neither do you, because I saved. So how do we make this? You'll start to see a shift in that standpoint when you do that.
Great. So just one final question, and I think that will actually wrap us up. We may have time for a few of the Q&As. The question is, and it kind of is a great way to summarize everything we've talked about here today. Ideally, what is your imagined future of Pittsburgh in relation to single-use plastics, considerations that need made? Just what's the ideal? So 5 years down the road, if everything goes well and it's a shiny, glittery beacon on the hill, what does that look like to you?
My ideal Pittsburgh, and out of this sort of legislation like this, is people seeing a very real difference from what their behavior is and the environment around them. If we can just, as terrible as it would be to just say we don't care about anybody's considerations about their like the money it costs, the inconvenience and stuff, and we just chopped off that block right there and say no more bags. But I'd hope that people would be able to see, well, there's less bags on the ground. There's less of the litter around us, and that's my focus. So of course that's how I see it. But I want people to see a very real before and after, instead of selling them theoreticals, which I feel like we have to do so much in this sort of prompting and education. Having very real results that people can see with their eyes and understand without having to be walked through it is the biggest impact I can imagine.
Great. I'm going to go down the line and have all of you answer.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Rick.
My brother lives in Philly, and when he comes to Pittsburgh, the first question he asks me is, "Where's all the litter?" So he lives in communities. He lives in a community that's swamped with litter and trash on the street. So I think we're probably gonna, if we want to get to that ideal place 5 years from now, we need to have access to the airwaves. We need to show people all the strides that Pittsburgh has made in the last 20, 25 years. And if we're to continue making progress, we need everybody to be part of it. So PSAs that come on during Steeler games, right? And just remind everybody that this is a civic enterprise, that it takes everybody kind of with the shoulder to the wheel. It may be that you take an Aldi grocery chain and have folks from Aldi train other retailers how to set up the alternative bags underneath their counters in a very practical way. So I think showing people, down the line that, we're not going to have that sea island of trash in the Pacific or Atlantic Oceans that is, the size of Texas, because everybody is going to be doing their small little part to prevent that from, being added to over the next 5 years. Maybe showing people what that sea of trash looks like in the Pacific would help make people understand that when that, container or when that plastic bag goes into the city's stormwater system, there's a good chance it's going to wind up in the Gulf of Mexico.
When I see it in when I see it in about 5 years is Pittsburgh Pride. I see a whole bunch of different neighborhoods with, their different causes on their reusable bags at the bus stop, at the grocery store. I see my favorite restaurant, I got Scratch on there. You know what I mean? I got, my political, whatever you freedom of speech. I see Pittsburgh Pride. I see August Wilson, like you said. I see, I don't know, the Steelers. I see, Citizen Science Lab. That's what I see, because what that means is you're making it appealing and fun to do the right thing. When you do that, you change the game. I'm going to pick up my takeout. I got my reusable bag with, Eat Initiative on it that matches my mask. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, these are the things that I see in a couple of years. And if you look at it like that and paint that picture, it's called asset framing. I'm a part of a cohort called Be Me, and it's like a Black male leadership, and it's a lot of, changing the narrative around what that looks like in certain communities. And we talk about we got to asset frame this, guys. And I hope the people that are listening understand we're not deficit framing this. Like, oh, you suck if you do this. And yes, paint the picture of the ocean and what that looks like so people get hurt, trigger that emotion. But let's frame it like, yo, what in UPMC, we need you to do the dopest, use a local artist, create a bag, a reusable bag, and freaking sell it and give it away to all your employees. Hey, Wick, hey, Snap, you guys need to spend all this money on freaking benefits. You put that in your line item for marketing. And you know what? I'm about to send a invoice because these are some good ass ideas. You know what I mean? Like, but I'm just saying, like, straight up, like, I'm tired of it because I don't get paid to do this, but I love it, and I know that we need this liaison and these people to be excited about it. If it feels like it's going to be a burden, it's never going to happen. In 5 years, it's going to suck. We're going to be doing this again. If we make it fun and we see the Pittsburgh pride, it changes the game, and we all could contribute.
Thank you, Chef. We do have 2 more minutes. Dawn and Myrna, if you want to speak briefly to your ideal future for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think it's along the lines of what everybody else is saying. This is about identity and what we think of when we think of ourselves. And we are saddled constantly with thinking of ourselves as part of a huge problem set. You know, there's nothing that you hear about on the news that's not really negative and impacting our lives. And we know somewhere along the way we contributed to it. And I think if we can switch that dialogue, and I believe legislation like this and a little bit of traction with it can make that happen, we can start talking more positively about the changes that we're having. So if you want to show the Pacific Ocean and the garbage island, maybe you show it reducing in size. You know, that there, as an example, I think there are just so many things, before and after pictures of neighborhoods specific in 5 years, that you're chronicling the work along the way and feeding that back to people so they know that they're contributing to something that is better for them and their community, changes it from a burden to really meaningful and rewarding work. I mean, there's work regardless, right? It's change, that's what it is. But if that work is looked at as somehow punitive, people are going to resist it. If it's looked at as something that they take pride in, it's a whole nother game.
Thanks, Dawn. And Myrna, do you have remarks briefly?
I don't have much to add. I think everyone has said it really well. I look forward to the day when there aren't bags in trees and caught on storm drains. And I really look forward to walking into a Family Dollar because they're in every one of our neighborhoods. And I'm not confronted by plastic everywhere. So that would be
wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you to all of our wonderful panelists. I apologize. I did see some questions and some comments in the chat, and we did go over our time today. But I will pass it to the council person to send you off on our brief break and give you instructions on how to join later.
Well, thank you so very much, Allie, and all of our panelists. Amazing, amazing conversation. Dawn, Myrna, Chef Claudia, Rick, Christopher. That was just such a robust conversation. Brought up issues and items that we've all been talking about sort of internally. And I think whenever you have this conversation, those are the types of conversations that come up. The need to work together. How do you change behavior? What is social change actually? How does it actually happen? The need to integrate equity, how to find unlikely audiences, how to utilize positive messaging and Pittsburgh Pride to make change. I mean, all of those things are exactly right. And so I'm so excited about this, you know, what we heard today and also what was going on in the chat. Really great conversation. Again, if you're new to this, if you're newly joining, you didn't hear this before, this is being recorded. You will be able to tune in later, and we will be getting the chat in a format that you can then view later, and you'll be emailed that information at a later date. So now just some housekeeping. We are going to take a 10-minute break. And the really important part of this is that we are going to be joining at a different Zoom link at noon or 2 minutes after noon. So the Zoom link is just added to the chat right now. If you miss it, if this closes before you click on it, you can always just click on it now and join now. Or the packet that you were emailed with all the information about today's summit, it's at the bottom of that as well. So 2 different places. So we're going to take a 10-minute break. Please do what you need to do. Refresh yourself, get another glass of water, coffee, tea, whatever you need, get a snack. Come back and join us at the Zoom link that was just posted in the chat. New Zoom link in 10 minutes. We'll see you there. Thanks so much.